coaching for senior leaders from medium and large companies. And I've been doing that since 1995. I was trained as a psychologist, but when I found consulting and then eventually coaching, it took me another 4 years, 1999, before I actually got trained formally as a coach. I found home. The desire to bring emotional intelligence into the workplace was definitely my spot. And then having done that for a while, I met different folks. And then 2006, I co-founded HabitChange Company. In 2007, Chris was one of our early folks, and she and I have been partners in the space of coach training ever since.
Awesome. And I was just tapping my email for 1 second to make sure no one is confused like last month, but I think we're okay. Yeah, so if you might know this or you might not, but in January, Jeff and I started these series, and the first one was around finding your why, and again, helping that fuel you towards how you can create some lasting habit change, knowing why should I do this and what's important about that. And then last month, Jeff took the lead on a part of the model that he created. He actually gets credit for the whole model really that we're doing, which was the 3-question mantra, which was a mindfulness tool. And we have the recording of that too. And we're continuing to move along with this. And so this one is really about small steps. And it's so interesting because, okay, so when I started working with Jeff on this stuff in 2007, small steps were part of the model. And really a lot of people weren't even talking about that. Like, it was revolutionary to a lot of our clients and us in our own lives as we practiced doing what we were teaching. And now you wouldn't believe it, or you might. There's so much out there, and it's, tiny habits is a big thing. And have you guys ever heard of that? BJ Fogg, and yeah. So this is one of those many things in life where you go like, darn, I wish we had the research backing, back then, and we were on it. And so it probably won't feel in many ways that different from the space that you've studied in that's out there and very popularized right now. So what I'm going to do today is just engage you, and, I'd love to have you all on mute and participate around this topic, and then do a short demo, and Jeff will help debrief that, or debrief the whole thing, at the end, and then we'll wrap up. So our time is going to probably go pretty fast. So what do you all know already? I'm curious about small steps and where it fits in with habit change.
Well, basically, if the steps aren't small, there's a much greater chance that they won't happen. So often I think people bite off more than they can chew, and maybe try to change too many things at once. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Have you found that true for you personally?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, I used to think when I first started coaching that I couldn't really attract clients until I had my act together completely, like 100%. And then I quickly realized that is not how it works. I'm working alongside this stuff, or I'm working on this stuff alongside with my clients all the time. And I find that I often attract people that are working on the same things as me, but maybe I'm just a few steps ahead of them.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah, those are the perfect clients in many ways. Sometimes if it's so easy for you and natural, we don't even know how to coach it because we haven't broken it down or had to struggle with it. That's relatable. Yeah. Anyone else around?
Yeah, for me, I've been intrigued by this because my model of change is very much around what I would call the cycle of experiential development, about how we have to go through a cycle. And and a part of that cycle is how we change, how we go from experience, having successful experiences or failures or whatever, but having experience and then getting the feedback that actually turns those into habits or new skills. So either way, they're a habit or skill. So that's been a model that I've used for quite a while, but there were some, it seemed like I kind of went from the experiential thing about making sure you get feedback and you learn from that experience. But it kind of seemed like I jumped into and then it becomes a skill and habit, you know. And there was a big, it was as easy as moving the pen from one sector to the other, and found out, well, there's a lot missing there about what actually happens to change our experiences into habits. You know, what really needs to take place in that sphere, in that, for me, that quadrant or that part of the cycle. And so I've been reading books like The Power of Habit by Charles Duhigg.
Yeah, great one.
Another one is The Coaching Habit by Michael Monge-Stanier. And then The Willpower Doesn't Work by Benjamin Hardy. And now I'm listening to a book by Mark Batterson called Win the Day. But all of them have the same kind of thing in place. And so my experience just recently is that I thought, well, have had a habit for as old as I am, in my 70s. So I guess for 70 years, I chewed my fingernails. I was a biter of fingernails. And so I thought, well, I'm going to try this out. I'm going to actually see if I follow the principles that were in there to see if they actually work. And it took about 2 months, I guess, but now I don't chew my fingernails anymore. Yeah, even at the age of 70, I thought that's a good demonstration that this stuff works, isn't it? Huh? That you can actually make changes. So I was really intrigued then by what you guys do to see, what I can do that'll help, not only help me, but help my clients. Yeah, so that's
Beautiful.
That's what makes me show up.
Yeah, thanks, Joe. It was really interesting working with this model and this concept, a long time ago when Jeff and I were kicking off our, this company. And I have this vivid memory of one of my first clients, without getting into the whole model or anything. He decided that he wanted to, lose weight as part of going through the program. And he's Italian. And I say that to say, because that was his claim. Like, how am I going to give up pasta and bread was his thing. And then he decided, I'm just not doing bread anymore. I'm like, well, whoa, how much do you have? Like, let's look at your baseline. And he's like, yeah, I have a bagel for breakfast. I have, sandwich for lunch and pasta for dinner. And I was insisting, like, not very coach-like, but I was insisting that he take a small step. And he says, okay, I'm just not going to eat bread. And I said, wow, that is not a small step.
That's right.
And so we kept kind of negotiating. And what we came out with in the end was to kick him off. He was going to have his bagel, but just pull off a little piece and throw it out, or give it to the birds or his kid or something. And that was the tiny step. Like, there was nothing going to change except part of his bagel was going to shrink, basically, for him. And it worked out so well for him. It kept increasing. And that's not the idea behind this necessarily. I mean, it is eventually, but it's not the idea that, oh, I'm just going to start really small, but really that's kind of just my secret agreement. I'm going to, exceed that goal every time. That really isn't the idea. But he started slowly exceeding that goal, which was the idea over time, to have the momentum, and it worked really well. And he did lose the weight he wanted, and it was a good success. But time and time again, and I can say this because you guys are coaches, my gosh, people don't want to take small steps. If you work with high achievers, like they hate it, and and you want to show them like the reality of this and so on. And then sometimes it's like, well, okay, let's try it your way and see what happens, and just do the experiment. And it's often unsuccessful. Uh, and it's unsuccessful because of what we know about motivation, that it comes and goes. And high motivation, I can do anything, right? At small motivation, everything can seem hard. So making it so tiny that you really can bypass having motivation to be at play at all. And that again is part of a lot of this stuff. So your ability has to be so easy around this. I got interested in going farther with this, since there's all this additional research that's come out lately. BJ Fogg is one of them, and I worked for 5 days with for free with one of his Tiny Habits coach this year. And one of the habits that I picked was to meditate every day, but only for 5 minutes. And, that number is going to be different for everybody, because I was pretty good and doing like usually 15 to 20. So the 5 minutes felt like, well, what's 5 minutes? But I realized 5 minutes is the time that I have no matter what. It's the time I have, excuse me, that at the end of the day, right before I'm going to go to bed, I can meditate for 5 minutes if I haven't yet. And invariably, just like the story of, my client in the bagel, the 5 minutes often became more. That was my minimum amount of time. And if I went more, I went more, but there was no pressure. And so no shame, no problem at all. It's like, oh, shoot, I didn't do it. Okay, I got 5 minutes now before bed, and being perfectly okay with that. So I just share that to say, you have to be gentle on yourself. And one thing this Tiny Habit coach got into with me was, it's all like experimentation and play and practice in the beginning. Because part of it was the anchor, like, when am I going to do this? So if one of the ideas in the model is, after I do blank, something that you always do, I will do this, the small step. And I was like, okay, well, it's when I come back with my dog, from the dog walk. And she flagged me and said, whoa, walk through that. You come back with the dog, and then what? Are you hanging up the leash? Are you getting a drink of water? Are you going to the bathroom? Are you really making a beeline right when you get back with the dog? Like, there needs to be a little more detail in there. And it was helpful because I had to get very real with that. It was almost actually that I did completely go into the bedroom after that to meditate, but I saw her point around that, on how things can get slippery. So what's coming up for you guys as you think about this application, either for yourself, and Jeff, I'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, well, I'll start. So just to give you another a piece around kind of an understanding of this, which is sort of the foundation of the model. Chris had said that, the step has to be so small that it sort of bypasses the motivation. The reason that is because the motivation is tied into how you see yourself. And at the end of the day, it's the thoughts and the images that you have of yourself dictate our behaviors, which turn into our habits. And so by the time something is a habit, we see ourselves in that way. And so, you come in and you're going to try to like charge through by just forcing new behaviors, even though you're fighting against how you see yourself, you will undoubtedly sabotage your results in order to reconnect with how you see yourself. And two examples I'm sort of jotting down. One, Chris, you mentioned weight loss. The other is that I think Susan was mentioning the becoming a coach. And I'll just be really brief, but like I remember when I started coaching in 1999, and I remember the ICF was having its national conference, right, in Chicago. And of course I had no money, no time, right? Because who just has money and time laying around?
Mm-hmm.
And I said, like, am I a coach or not a coach? Right. And it was like that. There was a moment for me about claiming this self-image piece. And and sure enough, like my early clients that came from psychotherapy world, needless to say, my early clients were therapy clients who needed therapy, not coaching. And I think of, like, Susan, like, your early clients are the people that are just 1 or 2 steps behind where you are, because that's sort of how you see yourself. But what that did for me is it really put a claim on my self-image. So, and then of course, and then over time, like it shifted, and then sort of I saw myself as a coach. So this today is all about, another way to reframe this is all about taking a step so small, but in the right direction, that your ego doesn't see it coming. And then you take another step, and your ego has no idea what's happening. And before you know it, like, you are there. So you're bypassing the resistance. You don't have to, do 20 years of therapy to go deep into the resistance and figure out why, your anger towards your mother has anything to do with why you can't lose the weight or become a coach. All you have to do, there's 2 ways of doing it. One is really face that images and thoughts that you have of yourself. And we can talk about that in a future meeting. And then the other is today. The other is to just kind of like sneak in there through subtle behavior change, progressive in the right direction.
Amen. So I'd love to work with a volunteer for a few minutes. Wow, Susan, to jump naked across.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly. I was going to say, what are you going to ask her to do? Yeah. She volunteers for anything.
Yeah, you're on. Yes. And you can say no after I say what we're doing, but I don't think you will. Yeah. So something I'd love to be able to work with you live on a small step that's en route to something bigger that you are trying to achieve in your life. And that would be the mission, should you choose to accept it. Yeah, you're on mute too, by the way.
Yes, I accept that.
All right, beautiful. Well, thank you. And so let's see here. We'll do, what do you think, 15 minutes, Jeff?
Yes, you're 23. That sounds about right.
Okay, great. Well, thank you so much, Susan, for volunteering so quickly. And if everyone else could just, you'll just stay on mute and hold the space, and I'll keep track of time, but if I lose it, Jeff, just ping me or something. Yeah. All right. So Susan, what are you thinking about for this?
It's something that I've been trying to get myself to do for a while. And so just a little bit of a tiny bit of backstory. I had a simple routine knee surgery a few years ago, and that was fine, but I got a serious staph infection. And so that really changed my recovery. It took a year for me to get back doing what I love, which is running, and a lot of hard work. But I need to, I've been on and off with yoga, and I know how really important that is for me with some of I've had back issues in the past, and I really want to create a yoga habit. And I have, during the pandemic, I found an incredible yoga teacher who offers free classes online. And so the funny thing is I thought, why aren't I doing this? I played sports. I played basketball at a high level. I'm the hyperachiever. I'm very disciplined, and I'm very disciplined with most everything else, and I like yoga. And this particular person that I follow, she does these 30-day yoga daily yoga practice where she's focused on something specific, whether it's breath or whatever. And I absolutely love her. And so the one tiny step I did take, but I still haven't gotten on the mat in quite a while, is I put the mat right next to my bed because I want to do it first thing when I get up. So I moved my mat and there it sits.
That would be a tiny step. So I want to congratulate you on that. I'm just curious for you, Susan, as you share this, I'm not hearing what what you suspect is the resistance to doing this.
Well, I've been trying to figure that out because I'm thinking, like I said, I'm a pretty disciplined person, and I know that motivation and willpower aren't enough, but I'm very driven. I'm very, very, very healthy, and I'm very active, and I really want to enjoy. I anticipate living a long life, and I want to be able to enjoy it. I'm very focused on health and doing things to keep my body and my mind healthy. And I know this is really important for me. And I don't really know what it's crazy. Like I've never experienced this before.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And maybe this isn't a good example.
No, I'm sure it is. I'm hearing that the why is there for you. You're an achieving person and you value health. So that at least that value is lined up in there. And, I'm wondering if it would be helpful. There's, part of the model are like asking a few questions on, we call it like the ability chain, so what, and this is from BJ Fogg, like there's like 5 things that could be one of the things that's getting in the way. And if I throw those out to you, I wonder, just see if anything resonates. So one is time. Another is money. Doesn't sound like that's it. Another's being, are you physically capable? The other is, do you have the mental energy to do the step? And the last one is that routine a fit for you in your life?
What's coming up for me, actually, even before you mentioned these, because it's not time, it's not money, it's not physical, it's not mental energy. It would be mental energy if I was doing it at the end of the day,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm wanting to do it first thing. And I think it is, because I work from home, it is a good fit. So I think the resistance, or what's getting in the way, is that as everybody here knows, working from home, there are many, many distractions.
Mm-hmm.
And I wake up and I think, oh, I need to do this right away. And then I do that, and that leads to another thing, and that leads to another thing, and that leads to another thing. I know that when I first got introduced to Tiny Habits a few years ago, I used that very successfully I wanted to increase my upper body strength. And so every time I went to the washroom, I would do push-ups.
Yeah.
And it really worked for me, except that I made the mistake of starting too big, and I ended up getting injured.
Hyperachiever, aren't you?
Instead of just doing 3, several times a day, I did as many until I got tired, and then I ended up with a bit of an injury. So, but anyways, I saw that worked. I know that attaching it to a specific routine like dog walking or, is really helpful. So I know, as we're talking about this, what's getting in the way is I decide that something needs to be done before the yoga.
Mm-hmm.
And so I do that, and then it leads to something else, and then it leads to something else.
Yeah.
Especially if it's on my phone or online.
Yeah, it's like a distraction spiral or something that's that pulls you away from that moment that it was going to be. So,
And then what happens is I'll say, okay, I'm going to do it at noon, because I've got a jump start on my day, so I'll do it at noon. And then noon comes and something else comes up, and I say, okay, I'll do it, just before dinner. And then it just goes.
so I'm still, yeah, and you're doing beautiful with this, by the way. Here's my my observation, that you don't have the small step yet that's small enough.
Yeah.
What could that be for you?
Well, I mean, the mat, just getting on my mat.
I was picturing that as well.
Yeah.
This is the image I got. So the mat is next to your bed, and alarm goes off.
It wasn't there, but I put it there thinking that would help, that if I saw it.
So I'm almost picturing like you're getting out of bed and your feet have to go onto the floor as you get out. And what if they went onto the mat? And now you're on the mat. And again, we're looking really small here. Just this is a starter small step. It's not doing full-blown hour of yoga, right? Because that's a big step. So the feet go on the mat. And what else? Like what's one action to pair with that? Possibly some type of celebration that you did that very tiny step.
Yeah. I'm just picturing myself doing that, putting my feet on the mat. And a celebration.
If that resonates. If not, don't worry about that.
No, it doesn't really.
No.
Because I'm thinking, I don't want to, I'm thinking, okay, I've got my feet on the mat, but I need to put proper clothes on. To actually do the yoga.
Are you going down a path of potentially a different small step around the clothes?
Yeah, I think it might be the clothes. I think it might be having, whatever I'm going to wear, having that where I can see it as soon as I get out of bed.
Yeah. And where would that be?
Just on a chair next to my bed.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
What are you learning about this for yourself, Susan?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the first part.
What are you learning about this in this moment for yourself?
That I need that tiny step.
Yeah.
I know that, and probably everybody here experiences the same thing, that it's like, getting out of bed when you've had a lousy night's sleep. It's that first step is often the hardest. And once you get on the mat or, whatever it is that you're trying to do, once you take that first step, like I know, with some of my clients, if they can just get, if they just say, okay, like you said, I'm just going to do it for 5 minutes. But then once they get going, they end up doing it for 30 minutes, whether it's a walk or whatever it is. So I know that once I get started, then it's just so strange to me that this is a thing, this is an issue for me, because I've been active my whole life, but it really is important to me to do this, because I know it's good for overall health and fitness.
Yeah, I feel that with you. So we only have a few minutes left, and I just want to make sure we lock in
Yeah.
for you what the step is exactly. So something like after I wake up and go get out of bed, then what are you doing with these clothes?
I think I'm going to have the clothes laid out and put them on right away. And also too, I think, I don't know, am I allowed to have another small step?
It's an experiment. You can play with it.
Well, I would need to make sure I have some water available, but I just really feel like I need to do it right away before I do I need to do the yoga before anything else, because it'll get squeezed out.
Yeah, and notice what's happening here too. You claimed a small step, and your that achievement nature is bringing you to a big step. Well, I think you have still in your mind that you're like, this is all, yeah, I'm going to do a small step, but then I'm doing yoga, gosh darn.
Okay.
So I invite you to don't go that far yet, right? That'll come, and just really allow yourself to be tiny with this.
I just got it. Like, just put the clothes on.
Let's put the clothes on.
Don't even think beyond that.
Right, beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it just sunk in.
Is there any support or accountability you need for yourself around just getting the clothes on? I feel so stupid saying that. I'm not coming over to help. No.
Yeah, I think I can. I think it's just, yeah, I think this is great. It sounds so silly, but I think that's a good first step.
Beautiful. Well, you did so great with our time today, and thank you for volunteering.
Thank you.
It doesn't feel silly to me at all. It feels powerful.
Well, thank you. And thank you everybody else for your patience.
Silently cheering you on.
I haven't blushed like this in years.
All right. Well, great job. And we'll wrap up then and open it up. Yeah.
So Susan, I'm going to ask other folks what they observed about the process, but I also want to ask you, do you want me to start with you, or do you want me to start with others?
You can start with the others.
Okay. So staying focused right now on the process, I'm just going to ask broadly. I wrote down a couple notes that I'll share at some point, but for the folks that was holding the space, what did you observe about the process? I can narrow the question if you need, but I'll give you another 20 seconds to it.
I noticed how quickly a little is not enough, that we're already leaping ahead toward the end, the result of this process, rather than staying in the process.
Yeah.
Yeah, great. Yeah, us overachievers, right?
Guilty.
What else? G, I know you got lots of thoughts. What did Chris do that worked?
Kathleen?
I'll jump in,
Yeah.
if it's okay. Well, first, everything that she would put out there, you always found something to praise her for. And then, which I thought was very effective, because she's a high achiever. Maybe she doesn't need that, but we all need that. And what was interesting to me is you didn't solve it. Also, just for background, I'm a very new coach. So if I'm saying things that are obvious, bear with me. But it was interesting how breaking down the small step, like you let her figure it out, and it was, you were presenting things back, but she figured that out for herself. And then just a comment, it's interesting to me how challenging the small step to make the small step is, and just by putting on the clothes. And then in my head, I was like, well, then what happens? And I guess I'm kind of moving ahead as well. So that's all for right now. Yeah.
Yeah, Chris acknowledged her early, and acknowledgement is such an important, coaching, right, competency, and acknowledging throughout. And to your point, Chris also celebrated early, right? She celebrated her first small step with the mat, and then later, Susan, she invited you to celebrate, right? And then like checked in with you, right? Yeah, does that work? Other thoughts about what worked? Then we can.
I saw the process being, first of all, checking on what is the why. So you checked that she had a why that was strong. That at least you felt that why was resonating strongly enough that she was convinced that doing yoga on a regular basis was really worth it. So that, if you will, the motivation or the why was there. And then you queried, okay, what's the resistance? And you had her verbalize the resistance. And then I think of something about then, okay, now attaching it to a routine. So going into something that she does every day, and then linking the new behavior to something she does without thinking about it, like getting out of bed. I mean, yeah, that's going to happen, one way or the other. So then she linked the new behavior to something that she doesn't have to think about. But that's and then obviously, as you said, celebrating that that when it resonated, this is the small step I need to take. Then, wow, if it makes Susan blush, that's pretty good, isn't it? Huh? I mean, you hit on something if you can do that.
The heat went up, right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. That's what I observed. I don't know.
Yeah, Tina, you bring up a good point, right? Because with this type of coaching, I feel like it's both structure and non-structure at the same time. Mm-hmm. Right? Like, to your point, Chris, early on got the why, and then even deeper about the values, even pointed the values that it was there. And that's sort of like a first thing, right? That's important, right? Yeah. And, why are we doing this, right? And then there's some structure around the steps and making sure it's small enough. But then it's also responding to what shows up in the moment, right? And I love the moment, Chris, where you just sort of like pause and say, what are you learning from this right now? Right. And right, rather than what I see particularly early coaches do is like they work harder than the client trying to figure out what should I say next and what's the great question, right? And so this is where the non-structure showed up, right? And then allow the client to lead and respond to that sort of powerful question. Other observations? Folks, by the way, Gio, don't you love how Zoom decides who is going to keep the camera on no matter who's talking? Like right now, you are center stage and I'm talking. Don't you like that? So we're going to stare at you no matter who talks next.
Zoom decides. Yeah.
Oh, there you go. Chris took it. So who's that? Other thoughts? Chris, starting with what worked for you, and I'm going to say this, what, if you remember, so what points in the process stick out the most for you?
It's a good question. Really listening to Susan and I was listening to those things that you said that were sort of precursors to creating the small step, the why, the values alignment, and both of those could have been explored further, but it wouldn't have demonstrated, we might have got caught up in something different that and with a small amount of time. So I felt good and assured enough that I think we're good there. And then realizing, gosh, she's done so many good things and is on the path and has the mat near her bed. And so I wonder what's what's really going on, and just asking that question. And then I thought, well, gosh, yeah, I've just, dove into this tiny habit stuff, and he named these 5 things that get in the way. I thought, well, let's try these out and see if, just let's make this easy, and it might speed it up a little bit even. And so it was just cool for her process around this. Um, and then being so mindful of, in coaching, it's the term like direct communication, and the direct communication for Susan was really around, here's this hyperachiever style, like, no, I'm successful, I go big or I go home, and here I am asking her to do something really small, and to be content with really small, like, so sort of kind of what Val was pointing out, and really calling that out in a direct feedback way, I felt was a big part of the process in some ways, because I could see her wheels going to, no, whatever we're going to do that's small is going to lead to me doing yoga. I thought, no, what if it isn't? How do we get happy with that? So those are the things. And then just seeing her land with the clothes, and then it's like, she got it.
Yeah, it was fun real quick when I love, it's like when you say something, to me, the best coaching happens when you open your mouth and you're not quite sure what's about to come out. But then you listen to what just came out, and then you laugh, you laughed at it. It was like a joyful moment, like, putting on your clothes, like,
yeah, right. I'm not going over there.
You need accountability. How do you clothes, right? Exactly. Right. And really, change can be joyful, right? Susan, it's probably a good time to bring you into the conversation. Just first of all, any thoughts about what's been shared so far? And you're still on mute. Susan.
Yeah, it was interesting to hear other people's feedback, and I think for me, there was sort of 3 key things that stood out. And first of all, thank you for giving me this opportunity to play.
Thank you.
Here. The things that stood out for me is, first of all, I felt very heard and seen by Chris, with her acknowledgements, and I just really felt heard. And I felt like she could see how my why was strong, so she didn't need to spend a lot of time there. I just felt like she got me. And then the second thing that really stood out, I can't remember what you said before you mentioned the 5 things that often are the cause of the resistance. But I mean, that was really helpful when you said those 5 things, because right before that, I realized, even before this call, I kept asking myself, what is the resistance? But I couldn't come up with an answer. So you stirred things up. and I realized just before you mentioned those 5 things, that what the resistance was. And then the last piece was me wanting to go beyond the tiny step. Mm-hmm. And I didn't even get it at first. I didn't even realize it at first, that I was wanting, I didn't realize it. And you just pulled me back, and all of a sudden it's like, oh yeah, I get it. I'm not doing yoga today. I'm just putting my clothes on.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was it was great. It was really powerful.
Yeah, it was great. It was also a good example of like sticking true to the model. Like, you're like, well, can I get a bottle of water, right? And it's like that moment when the coach is confronted with, like, it's the client's right choices, right, and not mine. and right, I know like there's a model here, right? And I'm demonstrating a model, right? And so it was like that playful, well, it is experimentation, right? So keeping you with the choice, but gently, letting you know, right, that you're sort of straying away, right?
Yeah.
Um, and being open to it,
Yeah, no, that was really powerful. And the question, I'm looking forward to listening to the replay so I can learn from this. But when you asked, what are you learning from this right now? That was really powerful.
When she asked the question, can you remember what was going through your mind at that moment, and what that switch was, right? Like,
well, and I can't, and I wished I could. But I think when I watch the replay, I will be able to. That doesn't help everybody here. But yeah, I can't remember what was going through my head. Do you remember what I said after that?
Not exactly.
I'm trying to think if I see if I wrote it down. Does anybody remember what?
I think it was you were making I thought it was around something around the awareness of what was getting in the way, around the distractions.
Yeah, I think
Getting
so.
clear on that.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't the full landing of just got to put on the clothes. What you weren't quite there yet. So I think it was more about, okay, at least now I know what's getting in the way.
Yeah, I think you're right.
So when you think of like coaching, right, it's so much about hard listening and soft listening, going in and coming out, right? So the coach is holding the space, right? But how powerful when the coach invites you to do the stepping out, right? Right. So the coach is in with you, like we're working it through. We're going to come up with that step, and then it's sort of like, what's really happening right now, right? And bring the coachee in, like, what is happening right now? What are you learning right now? Like any question that brought you back up, and that was it for you, getting you back into reflective versus the overachiever doer that you have been.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's great. Any other thoughts or questions that people have for Susan before I share a couple other thoughts and then see about maybe what we could have done differently?
I have one quick question. So the goal is simply to put on the clothes. That's it, correct? And then whatever happens from there, but it's just putting the clothes on. I just want to be really clear.
Yeah. So her celebration of taking that small step is just after the clothes are on. That's it. Yeah.
Okay. And one of the things I want to say about the coaching was also very non-judging and non-attached. And it's the same thing for the client. You do this small step, and reiterating what Chris had said earlier, it is so not about trying to, we know that I said earlier, it's sort of about tricking the ego, right? But it is so not like success equals did you put the clothes on, right? And as I think Susan said, like Susan and Chris said, like, you get the clothes on, when she gets to maybe 1 minute of yoga, she's probably going to do, say, 20 minutes of yoga. But it's not about doing the 20 minutes of yoga. It's about doing the 1 minute of yoga. Right? And that's the celebrate.
Got it.
So,
Thank you.
so as accountability wise, so let's say, Chris, you're now going to be Susan's accountability coach, if you will, or something like that. So you're going to meet back with her a week from now. Is that all you're going to ask is how successful was it with putting your clothes on every day? Yeah. And then the success will be, 5 out of the 7 days I put my clothes on. And then that's what you celebrate then, the success just of that small step.
Yeah. And even more than that, and this really came clear for me from my experience working with the coach for just 5 days. There were a couple, I was trying to do 3 different things, 3 different small steps, different goals though. Yeah. And one of them I just wasn't getting. It just wasn't. And the response of the coach was so playful and like, oh, not a problem. This is your week of experimentation, of tweaking, and so that would be true for Susan. So if Susan, if you and I met, next week and said, hey, how'd it go? And you're like, yeah, most days I got it, some days I didn't, and so on. We might explore, does the step have to be even smaller? Is it just a shirt a yoga shirt that goes on and not the whole thing? And we're just celebrating one sock, or, usually not a sock,
Tying the left shoe. Yeah, there you go.
and being totally non-judgmental. You don't beat yourself up. It's just fun. It's just like, oh, that isn't quite it. Wonder what needs to change, and having that lightness and playfulness to it.
So this is going to be a good lead into what Chris is going to speak to next, which is then you explore the barriers to change. Like,
yes.
Before you do, I'm going to offer one thing, right? So in processing, we're not talking about the content. Susan, for whatever it's worth, you don't even have to respond to this. It was just sort of an intuitive thing that popped up that maybe have valid or not. Another small step at some point to consider.
Jeff, I didn't hear what you just said. I'm sorry. Can you say it again?
I'm going to share something. And you can like ignore it or not. Is something at some point to consider. Okay. As a small step is to research doing yoga safely. I just had noticed that you had injured your knee and you're a runner, and then you wanted to build upper body strength, and then you damaged that. And one of the it wasn't for this small step thing, but I often honor that resist. Like there's a reason that it's showing up, right? And so anyway, so trying to learn from that part of you that wants to hold back, right? Anyway, so something to think about.
Yeah, that's great.
There's a learning in there.
Yeah, well, so we'll wrap up. We commit to these to only be an hour, and want to thank you guys for being on. So next month, we do have a cadence for these. They're always the second Friday of the month at this time, except next month it'll be on this day, but it'll be an hour earlier, and you'll get an email and all that just to remind you. And then we're back to the same time in the future months on the second Friday of the month. So come to any and all that you can do. And again, if these are as much for the public that's just curious. Well, like Frank, you're a good example of that. Someone who's exploring coaching, or new coaches, or seasoned, it doesn't matter. But don't feel like this is only for coaches, because it's not the case. And part of our model is something this is Jeff's creation, is the 7 barriers to change. And so it's kind of perfect as a segue. So next month, we're going to give an overview on these 7 barriers to change, and then dig a little deeper into one particular one. And that's our topic. And then you'll see, like, as we move forward, we'll do different barriers. We'll devote 1 hour to each one, each month. So thanks again. And you'll get the recording, and I would say slides. I'm used to saying recording and slides. We don't do slides. You'll just get the recording. And we will wish you a great weekend.
Thank you.
Have a wonderful weekend. Thanks again, Susan, for your courage.
Yes.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Yeah.
Bye.
Thank you, everybody.